Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag. From the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
All right, we're back again this week on the Brown Sports Bag. Everybody else is on spring break, but John and I are not. And Peter DiStefano is technically on spring break, but he told us he would come in here and talk to us about Caverna softball. He's in his first season coaching there. People may have heard of Peter DiStefano before. He's in the State Softball Hall of Fame after coaching LaRue County, having success there. He's coached basketball at Metcalfe County. And where else did you coach softball? There was somewhere else.
I coached at Green when it was slow pitch.
No, okay.
I coached at Metcalfe for 14 years. We had some success there as well.
Yeah. Did you coached 14 years of softball at Metcalfe?
At Metcalfe, yeah.
I did not realize you were there that long coaching softball.
Well, yeah.
I guess that's your last stop before taking this Caverna job was that at Metcalfe?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just going to ask you off the top, start with what motivated you to come to Caverna and coach softball? Because, I mean, they've had some good softball players in the past, but the program's been a little down in recent years.
It has been down. It's been quite a bit of a challenge. But to get to your question, my sister's a guidance counselor over there at Caverna, and she told us we had some good kids, some good young athletes, and they had lost their softball coach right before school started, I guess, and she just asked me if I would do it, and I was kind of hesitant a little bit, and not because they haven't had much success, but because I'm retired and I kind of enjoy doing what I want when I want to do it.
Yeah.
And so this has kind of put me back on a schedule. But, she convinced me that it was a pretty good move. And, of course, as I was telling you earlier, I asked our superintendent before I took the job if we could make some renovations to the field, and she's come through with flying colors. I think our field is really nice now. She's put $18,000 into our field, makes our kids feel good, bought us some new uniforms, fixed our batting cage. So we've got the things in place to start getting better. But that's basically why I'm there. I like teaching the kids. I could care less about the games. I like getting out there for 2 hours and showing them how to steal a base or showing them how to catch a ball, because that's basically where we're at. And, we've taken some beatings, but we've won some games too, so that's a good thing.
Well, and you mentioned the young athletes. I mean, some of them play basketball or maybe have played volleyball. I mean, I think of one like Summer Salih that you have taught. You're teaching how to pitch. I wouldn't say taught. You're teaching how to pitch. I understand she's not really pitched before. And Jayana Knuckles, kind of the same thing. So, you're basically kind of starting from scratch with some of these young players you have, but the upside is like Summer's a sophomore. So, you've got a lot of ground that you can cover with them as long as they're playing.
Right, and and Jay's also a sophomore, and they told me they hadn't pitched in a game. They had one pitcher last year, and so now we have two. And basically, they pitch every day. Either they pitch the varsity game, and then the next one pitches the JV game, and then the next day they flip-flop. Because I believe that the more they play and the more they pitch, the better they'll get. I think experience is probably the best teacher for them, whether it's, a good experience or a bad experience. Experience is experience.
Yeah. John?
Well, of course, I'll just say Peter and I have been good friends for a long time. Grew up in the same place, Greene County, same neighborhood and so forth. So I'm glad to see him back involved. It's just he's been retired for a while, so I'm glad to see Pete back doing what he's really good at.
Thank you.
And I would think part of trying to rebuild the softball program, a lot of it has to do with culture. That you got to don't worry about wins or losses for a while. It's probably you're sowing the seeds for down the road another year or two and so forth.
Right.
I guess. And that's going to take patience on your part and the player's part and so forth. Are you pleased with how far you've come since, I assume, since about January maybe?
Well, yeah. I mean, we didn't get a whole lot of our players until basketball and cheerleading was over. And at Caverna, you're small, so you share. And you try not to impede on the other coaches. So when they are playing, you don't want to take them away. And so we didn't. So we basically, before we even started our season, we had about a week and a half with them, and then the weather wasn't real good. And so we went in the gym, and of course the kids said, "We're going to go in the gym." And I said, "Yeah, we're going to go in the gym and work on some stuff." But yeah, culture is a big thing. I think you have to set you have to plant the seed that you're serious. We've had some incidences where we've suspended some kids and gotten rid of some kids, and the rest of them just look at you like, you're actually going to do that. And yeah, if you're going to be a program, you have to follow the rules. You have to show up, which, at the first couple of weeks we had kids not show up. So, they either didn't get to show up on my account now, but, recently, we have 18 kids, which is quite a few.
Yep.
We've had them all show up to practice for the most part. I still let them, if they've got STOP or some school thing, you let them go. You don't say, no, you're just going to be a softball player, because they're athletes second. They're academically first. And I've got some good academically sound kids, too. So you want them to do stuff like that. And that might hurt our team. But when you're building, not much is going to hurt your team.
Right.
So you let them do those things. But when they're there, you ask for their attention for as long as you've got them. And they're also learning that, hey, one of my rules is I get there early because I'm retired. I put the bases in, I get the pitch machine out, I get all this stuff, and you put everything away. I'm not putting nothing away. You all are putting everything away. And there better not be one thing left on that field or we're running. Mm-hmm. We've been going at it for a month. They've not left one thing out, which is a good thing. Because, at a small school, when you don't have a whole lot, you everything's precious to you. Even one ball lost is a big deal to me.
Right.
So they've taken that and they've done a good job with that.
I mentioned the two pitchers, but you have other players who have. They've played some. Again, they're pretty young. How many seniors do you have? We
have 3 that play. Mm-hmm. We have Kaylin Scott and Bethany Salee and Malaysia Edwards. They've kind of they're playing out of position. I think Malaysia's probably the only one that played first a little bit last year, and Bethany didn't play for 2 years. In fact, my catcher is a sophomore. She came back. She didn't play for 2 years.
Right.
So we've got some kids that coming back, and they have they've been a surprise to me. They, obviously, when you get a coaching change, you try the coach a little bit, but they've quit that. Mm-hmm. They don't try me as much as they used to.
Well, I was going to say this. I came to the Grayson County game, which didn't go well. No. But there were 2 things about that game that kind of stood out to me versus some past experiences. One was your first baseman, which I guess that was Malaysia.
That's Malaysia.
No matter what the score was, she was still calling out what was going on, letting people know what was happening, where the plays were. She just never stopped. And a lot of times you see those situations, especially with a senior who's, got a new coach and that kind of stuff. They may not even played.
Right.
She may have quit during the game, but I was impressed by that.
Yeah, I was too.
And then the other thing was Summer Salee was pitching, and Grayson County was hitting the ball. They're coached by a Hall of Fame coach as well.
Yes, they are.
And you told her, I don't care how many, they can hit and run all day. I just don't want you to walk 17, which was a reference, to, I think, to a game
previous.
And I thought, that's just one of those things on the confidence side is I just want you to play the game the right way.
Exactly. And Malaysia's been just special to us because she has grasped a lot of things that we're trying to do. Mm-hmm. When I took the job and I met with them, one of the things she told me, she said, I don't want to strike out much this year, and please teach me how to catch the ball at first base.
Yeah.
And she's been just really, like I said, she's been special for us because she's done that. I think in the first game we played, when we beat Presentation, the season opener, she had 2 hits, and she was just, I was excited for her. She was excited, and she caught some balls. Now, we dropped some balls, that's just us right now. We'll drop some routine plays. And they, I don't like when they say it's their fault, because I always say everybody watches you play. Don't, everybody knows it was your fault, but catch the ball next time. We'll be all right. Don't worry about it. So, and Kaylin's playing out of position. She's playing second base. She should be in the outfield and might be next week because, it's time that we move some kids around. But, like I said, it's, you're trying to piece together what you have, and I like the base that we have. We just don't have a whole lot of game experience. We don't have a lot of softball knowledge, so to speak. And you know, and I've said it's kind of like me giving you a drink of water out of a fire hose. I mean, we're just forcing stuff down your throat, and they picking up here and there. But you know, we just have to get a lot better. But we're trying. And like I was telling you, I think the last week or two, I can see a big difference in the way we practice. I mean, we are starting to make plays in practice. We know where to throw the ball. We'll start catching the ball. We'll hit our cutoffs. Now, when that happens in a game, I don't know. Like I've said, kids will do that when they're ready to do that, but we're trying to speed them up a little bit. But I can see a big difference from when we started till now. The scores don't indicate that, but I see it.
John?
I was kind of going to go back to what you were mentioning earlier. I can tell with Pete, because I've known Pete so long, that you are encouraged by, you have seen progress, and I think that's important, not just for you, but for the kids' sake too, to see. You may not get the results in games, but can you win an inning? Can you win a play? And do you make the right play?
Right.
They just better than you.
Right.
But you can still make right plays along the way.
Exactly. And, you know, we played LaRue. They beat us 20-0 in 3. But one inning, they didn't score. We got 3 outs real quick. And the first inning, it was 4-0, 2 outs. We dropped 2 fly balls. We should have been out of the inning, so it should have been 4-0 after 2. Instead, we're down 13-0. But, you know, those are just things that, you know, you just point out and say this. And, you know, we've got 3 kids that we've turned around and we're teaching them how to slap. And, you know, they got their head down a little bit. I said, hey, you've been slapping for 2 weeks. A lot of these kids have been slapping for 10 years.
Yeah.
I said, so when you get a base hit, you know, we'll celebrate. And if you don't, well, next time you get up there, maybe we can make an adjustment. So, you know, and I saw the state stats today. Jayana Knuckles is 39th in the state in steals, and we're 50th. When we get on base, we're running.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we're fairly aggressive. We just don't get on base enough. But, you know, we're starting to, like I said to you earlier, the last game we played, we put balls in play. We didn't strike out as much. We're starting to put the ball in play. And that's just a major jump from us looking at pitches and swinging and missing badly. Now we're starting to hit the ball a little bit. We're not getting hits, but the ball's in play, and they have to make a play, which is important.
With your speed, too, it puts pressure on people.
It does.
Well, when you like I said, I printed out your schedule, but my ink ain't good, so you can't see any of the teams you're playing on here except for Christian Educational Consortium. But, I mean, as you think about your schedule after the spring break, you know, your district is a pretty tough district in softball.
It is.
Green's always good. LaRue's always good. And Hart's not bad most of the time.
Hart beat Green the other night.
First time in a long time.
So, obviously, they're pretty good this year.
They're pretty good, too.
So, I mean, it's a tough district, but, I mean, you have some – and honestly, I mean, you played Grayson County, which is going to be a hard team to play.
They are.
So when you're looking at your schedule, do you have a kind of a timetable? You're like, well, hopefully this is a game where we know the competition is comparable in terms of experience and that kind of stuff, and maybe this will be one of the games where that light goes on, like you're talking about. You're seeing it in practice, but it goes on in a game.
I've seen that happen a couple of times, even in losses, like at Fort Knox. You know, I was telling you, we led 9-8 with 2 outs in the bottom of the 6th, and they scored 5 or 6 runs and beat us. You know, and then we went to Heritage Christian, and we walked 17 batters, and then the next game we walked 3 and beat them 19-2. You know, so that's a big thing. But as far as our schedule's concerned, we got. I think Somerset Christian comes to us twice, and we play Fort Campbell at our place, and you know we get Metcalf again, and I didn't think we played very well up there, and I think we have a chance to be competitive with them, and the Christian Consortium is another one in Washington County. So there's probably 6 or 7 or 8 games where I feel like we should be competitive to where we'll score some runs, and if we make some plays, you never know what's going to happen. But, you know, I've been pretty pleased. It's kind of hard for, you know, when you've coached at other places and you've had just good players and you know that what's supposed to happen, but it's not happening with this squad just yet. It's kind of, you know, sometimes I kind of push them to want to do some stuff. But basically we're just talking about, like the other night we got beat by LaRue, and we sat in the outfield, and I said, I like the way you didn't quit, because when you're done with softball and you go and you have your family, your child isn't going to want you to quit on them. You're still going to have to feed them, and you're still going to have to get up in the morning. You're still going to have to take them to school. Just like softball, you're still going to have to get up. You're still going to have to play this game. Win or lose, you're still dependent to do your job. I said, so there's a lot of parallels between athletics and life. I said, and this is just a life lesson. Sometimes things don't go the way you want them to go, okay? And sometimes you just got to step up. And if you're not going to step up, how about one of you all that's not playing right now? How about you stepping up and get better and take her job? I said, there's nothing wrong with that, because in real life, if you don't do your job, you're going to get fired. And if you don't deserve a raise, you're not going to get one. So if you don't deserve playing time, you're not going to get any.
You mentioned the youth league thing and middle school program and this kind of stuff that really hasn't existed for Caverna softball. I guess any of the players who do play either go in the off season, play at Hart County or maybe in the Berrien County League. Right. Some, but a lot of them play multiple sports.
They do.
So is that something that you look at, that you're like, okay, I got to also try to figure out how to develop a kind of a pipeline into this program?
Yeah, well, I coached a middle school in this fall. And I think it was the second year they had middle school softball. And we had one pitcher. We had 9 kids.
Yeah.
So we didn't play some because we had kids get hurt or something. So I hate canceling games. We played one game with 8.
Yeah.
Because it was somebody's 8th grade night. And I said we were going to show up, and we did.
Yeah.
And they offered, well, we'll give you a couple players. I said, no, we'll just play with what we have, and you just go ahead and do your thing, and we'll do our thing. And that's the way it is.
Yeah.
And, with the middle school team, they have no experience either. I mean, yeah, we walk in, we got the bats and the stuff, but we don't know how to use them.
Right.
Okay? So I'm sitting there, and I'm saying, okay, got one pitcher. She throws strikes sometimes. She doesn't throw strikes, kind of like the high school team. And my goal with them was we were getting beat 25, and I'm sitting here saying, okay, we're going to play them again. Maybe we can get a little closer. So I think we played, I think it was Monroe County or somebody like that, and they had beaten us like 23-0. And then the last game of the season, they struggled to beat us 10. We made some plays. We actually hit the ball. We almost won a B game, which was important to us. Our kids are cheering in the dugout because now they know what to cheer for.
Right.
It's not like you get a 3-base error and Sally got a home run. They understand now that that's a 3-base error, so I guess we're working on a cheer for we got to hit the 3-base error. But, but I like that we're enthusiastic. We're in the kids all the time. Watch the game. You need to learn what she did wrong and what you need to do if you get in that position. So, we're learning that. But, it's like the other day we put the pitch machine out there and we shot balls out in the outfield, and I think we caught maybe 2 all afternoon. But,
yeah,
we did get closer. Nobody got hurt. And next time we practice, we'll do it again.
You didn't wear helmets,
Oh,
did
we needed to. We needed to. I mean, it's like we're at the point where, it's like we were trying to teach them how to bunt, and they had no clue. And it's like they grabbed the fat part of the bat. And I told them, I said,
you'll break your fingers.
Yeah, you're going to break your fingers. I said, but I'll tell you what. When I first went to Metcalfe County, Coach Murphy over at Barron was at Cumberland, and he told me, he said, congratulations, you just took over the worst program in the entire state of Kentucky. I said, I don't know why you did that, but, so when we took over there, we were holding the bat, the fat part of the bat in our hands, and we're trying to bunt with the skinny part. And I told our kids, I said, well, at least you're a little further along than the last team I coached. But I remember Coach Murphy telling me that, and it was funny because at the end of the season, we won the district and beat him.
Yeah. So this is not your first reclamation project?
Heck no. Now, I've had some good teams, don't get me wrong. I've been really fortunate in softball where I've had, all you had to do is make sure they got to the game on time, and we were going to win games.
Right.
And now I drive the bus, and I make sure we get to the games on time so we can warm up and learn some stuff. But, no, it's not my first rodeo. And like I told you, I'm not trying to prove anything to me or anybody else. The kids needed some help, and I'm going to help them.
Well, it is. I mean, obviously, learning from a coach who's had success coaching softball and even basketball for that matter, had success coaching is a benefit. I mean, because it's like they have an opportunity to learn how to play the game, and if they love playing softball, they have an opportunity to get much better at it because you're there. And I think that part is fantastic.
I agree.
And I'm going back to your senior there, Malaysia there on first base, coming to you and saying, I want to learn how to do these things, because she trusts that you can teach her.
Right.
And she knows you know what you're doing. And that also bleeds down to these younger kids coming up, I do believe.
It does. I agree with you. And like I said, we got 3 kids slapping. We got a couple of kids. The last game we played, they got on base. They learned that they couldn't do it consistently, but they put it down that one time, and they realized, darn, I'm quick. I can get down the line if I just get the ball and play.
Yeah.
And so so now they're not questioning why we're doing it. I need to get better at it.
Yeah.
So they're in the batting cage, or they'll say, Coach, can you pitch me some balls so I can work on, we talk about drop your hands, lay the bat, put it down and go. And so, you can see they're counting. 1, I drop my hands. You can see it in their head that they're thinking about it. And that's all you can ask.
Yeah. John, you got anything else?
No, I'm proud of him, and I'm glad he's back involved and helping. And when you've been successful and you go, I'm not saying he's out at the bottom, but when you drop down to a team that's really, really struggled, that's not easy to do. But I'm happy as can be for him and the players he's going to reach. May not get them all. You never do. I mean, I coached for years. You're not going to get them all, but you can get some, and then when that light goes on, it's still a pretty cool feeling.
It'll be fun when that light goes on, if it ever goes on, but I believe it will.
Yeah.
I believe it will.
I'm with you. All right, well, Coach Peter DiStefano, I want to thank you for joining us and talking about Caverna softball, and good luck to you guys. And I think you guys will. This year will obviously be a struggle, but I think down the line, especially working with the middle school and the ones, there'll be ones that'll be attracted once they see a little bit of success. They'll come out there, and that'll change the dynamic as well.
I think they will, and thanks for the opportunity to let me talk about our program and our kids. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, this is Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, the chalk on the men's NCAA tournament got a little messy for the weekend. I guess we'll start with that. We'll come back to the high school. I looked at my sheet.
You confused me. You skipped a segment.
Well, I did, and that's my fault because I looked down at my sheet and I didn't. My eyes ain't so good anymore there, John.
Okay,
so
all right.
We'll start there. We'll come back to the high school baseball and softball in the third segment. Because North Carolina State, 11 seed, has made it to the Final Four. And to be honest with you, well, in the first half of that game against Duke, I didn't think it was going to happen. But, man, they just really kind of locked Duke down in the second half. And Big Burns took control of the game. He had foul trouble in the first half a little bit, so that probably slowed him down. Got so many moves around the basket. Every time I hear somebody says, he reminds me of Zach Randolph, I said, yeah, except bigger. And so, but he does have all those kind of nifty old man moves.
Yeah. It reminds me a couple of things. Number one, I think the run they've been on is incredible. And you need luck, too. Mm-hmm. They lost their last 4 of the regular season.
Yes.
In the first round of the ACC tournament, which they had to win, they weren't even close to being. In fact, their coach is going to get fired.
Yes.
They struggled to beat Louisville.
Yes.
In fact,
I really thought Louisville was going to win that game.
They were behind at half and struggled and finally pulled that out. Took a bank 3 against Virginia to send it to overtime. Then they beat Virginia. Mm-hmm. And then they, just caught fire, beat Duke, and then beat Carolina. Mm-hmm. And I think the other part of the luck comes in, too. It was that probably fortunate that the kid from Houston,
that was a huge
Duke
one.
would have not beat Houston.
No, if Shed had not gotten
injured.
Shed
had not hurt, almost broke his ankle in the first half. I think Houston was up 6, and Duke finally pulled that out, 54-51. But I thought all along that North Carolina State was going to beat Duke. They're just playing so much better than Duke, and a lot of 1984 Jimmy Valvano to it, too.
Yes, it does.
It just has that. I mean, they just have gotten so much more confident, and they've got a dominating player in the Burns kid who's a better passer than anything else. He's a tremendous passer. And then they've got shooters and so forth. They're just they're riding that wave, and it's confusing on why they struggled so much during the year. I didn't follow North Carolina State enough to figure out why were they had like 13 losses going to determine why. But whatever, they caught fire at the right time, and they're in the Final Four. With a very interesting matchup against Purdue. Do I think they beat Purdue? I don't. I think Purdue is like UConn playing at a dominant pace, but it'd be interesting to see Burns versus Edey.
Oh, yeah. Well, another thing I noticed in the pregame, when they show you the classifications of the players of the starting five, and 4 of North Carolina State's starters are graduates. And, they're graduate players, and I guess that means they're 4th or 5th year players, probably 5th year players. And then the other one's a senior. And then Duke's was 1 senior, 3 sophomores, and a freshman. And I don't know that this has any impact, but what did seem to happen in the second half of that game is those players from North Carolina State never played in any kind of panic. And the Duke players, I thought, offensively especially, started looking like they were petrified once they got behind. I mean, they started looked like bad shots, not running the offense, and maybe they didn't really have an offense to run. I don't know. But North Carolina State just was composed the whole time, which I thought was a fascinating thing, especially considering what you pointed out. I mean, they were not a good team, so to speak, during the regular season.
No, they got hot at the right time.
Classic, huh? Well, so there are 2 number ones out. You mentioned Houston losing to Duke, and I'm with you. I really thought Houston would have won that game if Shed didn't get hurt. I mean, they still almost won.
It's their 3rd starter out since January.
Yeah, I mean, that's a team that
they just ran out of bodies.
Yeah, they're bad luck. I mean, basically
bad luck. Yep. Probably the second best team in the tournament.
I would say so. I mean, and I hated that for Shed because like I mentioned last week, I love watching him play basketball.
Yeah, 5th year senior. Yep.
And then so you got Purdue. They're left as a 1 seed. Edey just continues to be just an amazing force in college basketball.
It really is. And again, I've said this all along. I think this would apply to Kentucky too. The hardest game to play is that first round. Mm-hmm. And Purdue, has had that kind of that jinx or whatever. They got beat by a 16 seed last year.
Yeah.
But I thought if they got by that first round, they're going to be awful hard to beat because they've been dominant this year.
Yeah.
And once you get by that first one, you can kind of relax and play. And Purdue, they're such a force because Edey is such a force. Mm-hmm. And he probably doesn't get the recognition he deserves because he's not a quote-unquote NBA guy.
No, he doesn't have an NBA feature, really, despite his size.
I think he'll be a first-round pick. I think he's got a future, but, he's not going to be a star, 15, 20 minutes maybe, role player or whatever. 2-time player of the year, but the team is assembled so well.
Mm-hmm.
They're the best three-point shooting team in the country. Mm-hmm. So he has the shooters. Those guards last year, they were freshmen, now are sophomores.
Yeah, and they're playing very well in this tournament.
They're playing very well, and they picked up a transfer that's moved into, and it's just happy for them because, they've taken – I think the coach in particular, who's a really good coach, has taken a lot of criticism for some of the early round exits and so forth. So I'm happy for Purdue. They beat a really good Tennessee team.
Yeah, that was a good game.
It was a really good game. I don't think Tennessee necessarily lost it. I just think, it was just 2 teams just going at it. And
it turned out that you, despite how many bodies you throw at Edey, most of them are going to foul out, just trying to keep him from making his moves.
You'd like to think there'd be. If utilized correctly, you just can't tell me that the NBA can't figure out a way, a coach for him to play. He's 7 foot. He's dominant.
Well,
he'd have a hard time guarding somebody on the other end, but they can play zones and things like that too. I just think we kind of get into these stereotypes and so forth. But he is an unbelievable college player. Unbelievable college player.
I do think he could have an NBA career. A good one.
Yep.
If he played on a team that actually knew how to utilize the big man versus the pick and roll offense that's basically running the NBA now.
If he can't play in the NBA today, then you're telling me that people are telling me then Kareem couldn't play today.
Well, they would be telling you that.
Olajuwon couldn't play today. All those greats in the game is different.
Yeah.
But, the way I look at it, they have to guard him too.
Right.
He would have trouble guarding people, but they would have to guard him too.
Yeah.
And I just think it's how you're utilized, and you gotta have a coach who can make good decisions with personnel and so forth.
Well, I think when you watch that Purdue, talking about the guards, it's just not the three-point shooting. It's the ability they've upgraded this year versus the past year or even the year before that of getting him the ball in the right spots. They have guards who can make passes to him.
True, but they're all because they shoot it well.
Yeah.
So you can't just put 5 around him now
Yeah.
because they're the best shooting team in the country. And so that's part of it. The spacing is so much better this year because they can make shots. Purdue's playing great. I mean, Purdue and North Carolina State, that's one matchup, and the other one's going to be UConn and
Alabama.
And Alabama, that's correct.
Yes, the worst nightmare for Kentucky fans almost came true if Tennessee had beaten Purdue. Where you have 2 SEC teams in the Final Four.
Right.
And at the start of this NCAA tournament, it did not look like the SEC was going to be good.
SEC started off 1-5, I believe.
Yeah.
But Tennessee played well the whole time.
Yeah.
They just got beat, but they played good. But Alabama's playing really well. Alabama's running into a juggernaut in UConn. UConn, I don't think they've had a game under double digits in the last 2 years in a tournament.
No.
And what's interesting about UConn is they beat Illinois and they went on a 30-0 run. I've never heard of that at that level.
Just does not happen in the NCAA tournament these days.
And the thing about UConn too, even this year and last year, they don't have lottery pick players as far as I know.
No.
I mean, they don't have those obvious pros that you just look at. I mean, in fact, if you line up a lot of the UConn players, I don't know if a lot of people could just pick them out. So something about how they play, both offensively and defensively, makes them elite because nobody's come close to them. I do think Alabama presents a different challenge just because they play different. They play so much different than anybody else. It's a high. They're either going to shoot a 3 or they're going to shoot a layup. They're the number one. Alabama's the number 1 scoring team in the country too because they play at such a fast pace. So
they're constantly on the attack.
UConn does have depth and so forth. I'm sure UConn will figure it out, but they do. It's not. They're going to play a style that I don't think UConn has seen, which makes the game, which gives Alabama maybe a 10% chance to win. I don't know if it's even 10%, maybe 5%. They'll be a heavy underdog, but they got a fighting chance.
I think the one thing about this particular game in the Final Four is if that had been in an Elite 8 game, I think UConn would probably beat Alabama handily. But what I'm saying is because it would have been the second game in 4 days. And with the way that Alabama plays, I mean, they can play that way, but you go back to what you just said about UConn's depth. They just roll out guys, and they all execute basically the same way, which is, I think, the most amazing thing. They have some key players like they did last year that, make big plays and have big moments. But really, everybody they put on the floor runs whatever the system is they're running, the offense they're running, and plays defense effectively the same way. And so if that had been the Elite 8, I think eventually UConn would just run Alabama out of gas, despite the way that Alabama plays. I think those extra days going into that Final Four game is a benefit to Alabama to figure out defensively, which is something they didn't do very well during the regular season but have done better in this tournament, how to play UConn, but also some extra time to just get some rest and get their legs.
Yeah, they got a fighting chance. We'll see. But UConn is – I can't remember the last team that's gone in a 2-year stretch as dominant of UConn. I don't remember.
I mean, you might have to go back to UCLA of the 60s.
Well, Patino and UK there for a while. Boy, they blew out about everybody they play too.
Yeah.
But they eventually get to a close game. But, man, they just ran through people. I mean, just annihilated teams. This team, UConn does it differently, but – I mean, not to have a double-digit game in almost 2 years is amazing. And in a time where there's more parity than there's ever been.
Right.
But it's not a lot of parity when you play UConn.
Well, apparently the coach there is good at knowing exactly who he wants
Early?
and putting them in his system and
because he's winning without the elite of the elite players.
Yeah. Well, meanwhile, on the women's side, let's talk about this real quick.
Okay.
The rematch of the national title game is tonight between Iowa and LSU.
Yeah.
And Iowa has looked good, I do believe.
They looked good the last game. I did not think they played well in their first 2 games.
Yeah.
But they played much better against Colorado.
Yeah. Now, LSU has looked good in a way, but I'm not convinced their offense is that good despite how they're playing. They seem to just be more talented, maybe.
Yeah, I wouldn't say they played their last game they played better because they beat a good UCLA team. I wouldn't say they played good their first 2 at all. Yeah, I mean Iowa. You when you watch Iowa play, it's more graceful. Obviously with Caitlin Clark, and they have so many 3-point shooters, and they're so skilled. LSU doesn't play that way. They rely on rebounding, defense, more toughness. Is it fair to say emotion in one sense? And Angel Reese and things like that. Obviously, Kim Mulkey gets a lot of attention too, to say the least. So,
yeah.
So
she almost shields her players in a way because she gets so much attention, and maybe that's the point.
I guess I don't know, but it's going to be a game of can Iowa rebound. If we're just going to get into technicality, can Iowa rebound with LSU? Because LSU is a tremendous rebounding team, very physical, and LSU really didn't have those bodies to be that physical. So can they rebound with LSU? Can LSU make enough shots? Because they're not a great offensive team.
Yeah.
But they can make shots if they get second shots, I can tell you that. The big kid for Iowa has to stay in the game. I mean, she's a good player, but they don't have a lot of depth inside. And I think Caitlin Clark's going to have to probably put up 35. She's going to be in the 30s. And if you're LSU, you can't let Caitlin Clark get 30 points and 17 assists. If she wants to get 40, that's fine, but don't let her have 20 assists. You can't let her have the points and the assists.
Yeah.
And one thing
pick out one of them. Huh?
Pick out one of them, and LSU is good defensively too. They've got enough athletes. Now Haley Van Lith is not a good defender, but they don't have to play her.
Right.
So they do have enough athletes. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how the game is played and how the game is called. Sometimes the game in the women's game gets a little bit murky with how the game's called at times.
Well,
I'll be honest with you. It's just if you fall down, it's a charge right now, which drives me crazy. Most block charges are actually blocks, but right now it's a charge. And I'm a little concerned at times with how that's going. And they've had a lot of, just to be honest with you, with the women's game, it's at the top of it ever been. But man, they've had some blunders. The 3-point line. How do you not have the 3-point line right?
Man, when I saw that picture, I was like, it's obviously different.
Yeah, people don't know, they played 6 games or 7 games out and see that. They just send, unlike the men where they have 4 basically divisions. They only go to 2, so they have 8 teams in one spot, and they've already played every game with the wrong 3-point line. It was right on one end of the floor and wrong on the other one.
Yes.
And I kept saying the other night when UConn was playing, they played Duke. It's just a terrible shooting game. I mean, what was going on with the shooting? And maybe that's what was going on. The 3-point line was somebody from the stands who just bought a ticket.
Yes, took a picture of it.
And then sent it to somebody like an hour before the North Carolina State game, and showed them. And they had played that long, hadn't figured it out. I mean, it's embarrassing, to be honest with you.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, you mentioned the officiating.
Just give you an idea.
Okay.
At Diddle Arena for the girls region and boys region, Jay Turner and I did the game. Did the first game of the whole tournament. And we went down there. And the 3-point line, you had to put a new line for high school, was wrong.
Yes.
So we're down there like hour and a half early, and I just kind of walked out there with Scott Thompson was down there too, and just kind of pouring out. Just said, no, look, the line's wrong. And luckily it was by tape, so they pulled the tape up and they fixed it before the first game.
Right.
Well, that's high school. This is a multi-million-dollar industry, and have it wrong. What surprised me is it went so long without people noticing. That's what shocked me.
Well, and it's one of those things that maybe if you're at ground level, naked eye, it's not so obvious. But that picture, it was so obvious the difference between those two that I saw online, which I guess is the one that was taken and sent to somebody.
Yeah, one was on one end of the floor, it was the correct 3-point line.
Yeah.
The other one was much shorter.
Yeah. Well, and what was interesting is, unlike at Diddle, where they actually had it colored in differently, I guess.
Yeah.
So you could literally see it wasn't like you were just looking at wood and wood.
Right, that's correct.
And so I was just like, wow, I cannot believe nobody saw that. And you would think that the players in the warm-ups, I know you warm up on the basket you warm up on, but it started me thinking maybe they should switch warm-ups at some point in time, instead of the way they usually do it, which you're going to be on this basket in the first half, you warm up on this one.
Well, North Carolina State and Texas, they agreed yesterday because it was on national TV, it was on ABC.
We're just going to play it.
We're just going to play. If not, they had to delay an hour, and they just said, just let us go. It's not worth the delay. But it's going to be fixed tonight for the UConn game.
Yeah.
No, it's not UConn. It's I don't think UConn is in that one. It's either UConn's in it or it's...
Well, it's either Iowa, LSU, or the UConn game tonight.
Yeah, I think it's the UConn.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, there's that. Then they had the official who was removed at halftime because it turned out he had graduated from one of the colleges he was officiating.
Yep.
And there was another, I don't know what that one was.
Yeah. So, they've had their, probably miscues that shouldn't be miscues, at that level. So, that part...
But there's just no way. There's no way a men's NCAA tournament game would be played with the wrong 3-point lines for a whole day, basically.
I know. It's frustrating. But you got two great games tonight.
Yes.
And with stars in both of them. Of course, obviously, the marquee game is Iowa and LSU, a remake of the finals from last year.
Yeah.
And then the controversy between Caitlin Clark and, the Reese,
Angel
Reese, all that stuff. I'm not into that stuff, but a lot of it creates drama. A lot of people are into that.
Well, it's really the people around that are making it. Those two don't really play into it. They
don't.
Just we compete, and
though they kind of were involved in it last year.
They were.
Right. And the other game should be, you got two stars. You got UConn and Paige Beckers versus the freshman of the year, Juju of USC. That should be a great game, too.
Yeah. Before we get off of this part, I wanted to talk about South Carolina a little bit because they look so dominant. They were up by 22, I think it was, with 5 minutes to go in the third quarter against Indiana. And then Indiana had a chance to tie the game. Mm-hmm. I mean, I thought that was a
same thing against Oregon State.
Yeah.
Oregon State made a big, they got within like 2 points or 4 points of them in the second half.
It's the kind of thing, I mean, obviously they've continually been the better team, but we're seeing some cracks in, I guess, maybe their focus and that kind of thing. And, the wrong team might bite them.
Oh, they're not unbeatable.
No.
But Indiana and Oregon State take off the uniforms. They're about the same team.
Yeah, shoot a lot of threes.
Shoot a lot of threes, highly skilled, really good post player, very well coached, and so forth. So they're kind of the same team, and they gave them a whole lot of trouble. But no, South Carolina is not unbeatable, to say the least. Any of the teams get up there could probably beat them, though I think they're really good. Yeah.
Well, and they are better. The Indiana one just surprised me because they were just killing Indiana. And then it was obvious that they had some unforced turnovers, some bad fouls, just all the kinds of things that happen if you're going to lose a lead. And then the other team catches fire on you, and you can't put them out. So I thought that was just a little bit shocking. And they still, during stretches of those games, obviously both showed how dominant they can be.
Yeah.
So,
other news, Kenny Brooks, Virginia Tech coach, has gone to UK.
Yes.
Over the UK job. I think he's a great coach.
Yeah.
I think it's a tremendous hire. I love how he plays, his style of play. And I noticed where Tennessee Lady Vols fired Kelly Harper today.
That shocked me.
I was a little surprised.
Yeah, that one surprised me. Oh, and by the way, also Louisville found themselves a men's basketball coach.
Sure did.
Seemed like he wasn't on the radar of choices whenever the search started, but maybe, that's just the way things go.
He had a great press conference. It was full of energy. He had a great press conference because he...
Total shift from the previous coach.
From Charles. Oh, yeah. I mean, he's got unbelievable energy. I think he'll do fine. Now, can he get them to the Final Four? I don't know. But I know they're going to be a lot better. Mm-hmm. And his line was, they asked him about recruiting, and he said, you can tell I'm a great recruiter by looking at his wife. He said, I recruited her. And he said, by the way, I was her third choice. Going back to, looks like Louisville, two other people passed them up before they got
That's a great way to address that situation.
He just said it in press conference, and everybody laughed, so that was pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully that's a good hire. Hopefully it pans out.
I hope so. We'll see. I think you'll do fine.
Yeah. All right. This is the Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, last week we kind of talked about how Barron County baseball was. I was unsure. You know, they had some bad breaks, lost some. They played a tough schedule, lost a tough game to Taylor County, but then had a loss. I think at the Grayson County that was a little bit of a shock. And we were like, they're playing a tough schedule, so some of these losses are their record is what you might expect it to be. They're playing some young players as well. But last week, boy, they went on a tear. I mean, they had 2 good wins, especially the one against Central Hardin on Thursday. They had a good week last week, and it looked like all the things that Coach Alfonso was trying to get them to, buy into and commit to, they really played last week probably like he wanted them to.
Yeah, they went 3-0.
Yeah.
Got the record up to 5-6. Beat I know 2 good teams. South Warren beat them 4-3 and beat Central Hardin 8-5. Also got the win over Westmoreland. So
yeah.
I think Joey Myers pitched really well against South Warren. I think he went 6.
Mm-hmm. And maybe Skylar Parker closed that one, I think.
He did. That's correct. So, they kind of got it, seemed like, turned around a little bit and going down to Florida and got several games down in Florida starting tomorrow, I believe.
Yeah. And that, from what I understand, when Coach Alfonso was in here talking to us, those are going to be some really good teams they're playing down there.
Florida teams, I think.
Yeah. So, it was a good week for them. I thought it was an impressive bounce-back week after the week before where they played a tough schedule, but they had a couple of losses that were kind of like, okay, those were not necessarily great games.
Yeah, Sutton Hyde and I think Jordan Harris hitting the ball real well, both over 400 so
far. And then, meanwhile, the Glasgow Scotties did not necessarily have a great week after they had picked up that win against Franklin Simpson the Saturday before, lost to Monroe, and,
beat Hart.
And they're pitching a bunch of pitchers right now. Maybe the deal is Coach Carmen and his staff are just trying to find the people who are going to be consistent on the mound. Barron, Alfonso kind of knows who his pitchers are. He knows who he can put in certain situations. Maybe Glasgow's still searching for those guys. Who knows? Who knows how that's going to work out? They did not go to Florida.
No.
They're playing at Bowling Green starting Thursday. I think they're playing 3 games in 3 days over there.
Yeah, they're 4-6. I think Weston Carroll, I think leads them in hitting 452, and I think Zach Poore also is like in the high 300s right now.
Yeah, and then on the softball side, I think the most shocking thing about last week for Barron wasn't that they lost to Greenwood, because we talked about this on Monday. It was it was 12-2, 13-2.
12-2.
And I thought maybe there was a chance it'd be a high scoring game because Greenwood's going to put up runs, but I really thought Barron would put up runs against them as well. I think that was the part that was probably the most shocking about that particular game.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't know what happened, to be perfectly honest with you, but as long as Witcher has been there, Chloe Witcher. They've been in every game in the last 2 years. And They really hadn't been blown out at all, so I'm not really for sure exactly what happened. That was a blowout pretty early, too. I think I think Greenwood jumped on Barron quickly. So Barron came back and beat Glasgow 8-2 and Bowling Green 17-5, though.
Yeah, they bounced back. You mentioned since Witcher's been there pitching, earlier in the season they lost the number 1 team in the state 6-1. That's what might be what you expect in the second week of the season with South Warren and Barron. But, that Greenwood game it surprised me. Because earlier, I think the week before, Greenwood had beaten Warren East 10-9.
Oh, yeah, Greenwood's good.
Yeah,
it's good. Not that Greenwood beat Barron. I was a little surprised by how much. Katie Murphy's hitting .571, 19 RBIs. Katie Elmore, .516, and Riley Reed, .455.
Yeah. You mentioned Barron's win over Glasgow, 8-2. I actually thought Memphis Prophet for Glasgow pitched pretty well in that game against Barron.
Yeah, only 2 earned runs out of the 8, so that was good.
Yeah, they basically gave up, I think it was 5 in the fourth with 2 outs and two or 3 errors.
Glasgow have been run ruled several times this year. They're 1-6, but Barron, 8-2, a very competitive game. I thought Glasgow played well. They lost to Allen earlier that week, 10-0, but they got. They got to catch the ball better, obviously, to support their pitching.
Yeah.
But I thought that was a good performance by Glasgow.
Well, and I tell you what, Jakiley Green continues to play well for them at the plate. She hits the ball.
Coming off basketball, too, so she's, kind of just now starting to kind of round into form. She had 2 hits.
Yeah. That's about all I got for the high school baseball, softball. Pretty much, like I said, Barron County softball, Barron County baseball are down in Florida this week. Glasgow softball's not playing this week, and the Glasgow baseball is playing at the end of the week over at Bowling Green, and they're going to play 3 games over there. So it's kind of a light week in terms of local action. If you're listening to the show, you're doing it on the stream right now, probably because you're probably in Florida. All right, this is Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, we got about 4.5 minutes left here on the show. I wanted to kind of do a shout-out, I suppose, and talk about Lucas Christian, track athlete for Glasgow High School. Last week, they went and competed at Greenwood, and it was a pretty good meet. I mean, it had Greenwood, Warren East, Warren Central, South Warren. Warren East is usually pretty good on the boys' side and girls' side in track. Warren Central is on the boys' side often. And anyway, the team finished second overall, and Lucas Christian broke the Glasgow High School triple jump record. He cleared 42.10, which is not Olympic level, but I mean, it's pretty dadgum good in high school. And right now, I think in that particular region they're in, which they moved back down to 1A. There are 3 classifications in track for those folks who don't know. So they moved back down to 1A. That division, that region they're in, includes Greene County, Owensboro Catholic, Bethlehem. I think Bardstown should be in that region too, but I'm not sure. So not a bad region when it comes to track. But anyway, he's got the number 1 triple jump distance in that region. And I think he's number 1 in that region in the 300 hurdles and the 110 hurdles. So it's a senior year. He's off to a pretty good start here early in the season. For Barron, Chesney McPherson has not run yet in a meet. And they haven't had a team meet yet. I think I mentioned this last week. Coach Beals said they were going to not have a team meet until after spring break. But I understand she's been nursing an injury, so there were some distance races and that kind of stuff that you would probably look to see her in. The Miracle Mile ratings came out, I think, earlier maybe this weekend. And if for those who were looking on there to see her name, that's why it wasn't on there, is because she's not actually run a qualifying meet yet. So hopefully she gets healthy and she can get back out there. But she's got Kentucky in front of her career, and so if she's nursing an injury, then she has other things to prepare for. I'm sure she would like to finish off her high school career, though, in fantastic fashion, no matter. And then the Reds are underway. What are they? 2-1, 3-1? I think
2-1.
Okay, got off to a good start. Won their opener last Thursday. Of course, you can listen to the Reds here on 104 The Score.
And played tonight against Philadelphia.
Yep. So gonna be an interesting. What you said last week, you thought they could have a good season in front of them.
Yeah, they kind of start off like they did last year with a lot of come-from-behind games. Yesterday they were down 5-3 in the ninth and came back with 2 outs, too. Hit back-to-back homers. One was a 2-run homer and one was another homer to walk off, 6-5.
Yeah, for Reds fans, those are the kinds of games that in recent years they've been used to not winning or being on the other end of that situation.
Right. That's correct. But they had a lot of those last year too. They're very exciting. Obviously, they're young, exciting, can hit, and just with the Reds, just depends on how far can their pitching take them. The Nationals not the greatest team in the world, but still go 2-1 at home, and they face a really good. Philadelphia is one of the better teams right now. Anything happen in a series this in April, but still, good start.
I mean, we're in the first week of the season, but the Reds, hopefully they keep up that pace. And, when we get to that trade deadline discussion like we very often do, who are buyers and who are sellers, they're in the buyer's market. A lot of times in more recent years, they've been the sellers and unloading high-end contracts and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we hope they'll be in the buyers. It depends on what the record is.
Right.
You'd hope they're going to be in good position by I think it's All-Star break.
Yeah. So, I mean, at least we're off to an exciting start for Reds fans. And it's good, here. I mean, obviously, if we're broadcasting the games, we want them to be good because more people are going to be listening to them.
That's correct.
And, it brings some energy to it. And after the couple of years ago with the discussion with the owners and that kind of stuff, where things seem to go sideways, I don't know if they changed course in their thinking, but they obviously have done something that they were not doing previously.
I think they changed course in their scouting and player development. I think that's where they changed.
Yeah. All right. It's Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.